Now, let's hop back up to the very top of the pay-per-view card, UFC 282, with the main event on the marquee of that pay-per-view, Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev for the vacant UFC light heavyweight title. And for now, the title remains vacant because this fight ended in a split draw. And just for anybody who might not be sure, a split draw is where one judge scored it red, one judge scored it blue, and one judge had it even. So the scorecards read 48-47, 48-46, and 47-47. Let me just see real quick. The judge who had 48-47 scored it for Blachowicz. The judge who had it 48-46 had it for Ankalaev. And then Sal D'Amato had it even 47-47. Omar, what was your reaction to the performances of these two awesome light heavyweights?
So, again, for some context, I did not watch this fight until recently. I saw a lot of the headlines. I saw a lot of the results while I was on the boat, but nothing really too specific and definitely no videos. When I saw the results for this fight, it was very surprising to see that it ended up being a draw. Then I watched the fight and I completely understood. Personally, I had Blachowicz winning the first 3 rounds of that fight. I thought his damage to the legs were absolutely significant. To me, they were just as good as if he had rocked him on the temple. I mean, you could see the physical damage that was occurring on this man's legs. His style and his stance changed multiple times. At one point, the man was bouncing his front leg almost like a Muay Thai fighter because, one, I can only imagine how much pain it was to actually put weight on that leg, but he was also trying to remove any weight for every time he got kicked, so it wasn't nearly as bad. But his shins were absolutely destroyed. The other point is, Jan, what the fuck is that man's shin made out of? It is unnatural how he kicks Ankalaev shin to shin and seemingly takes 0 damage doing so. I don't know how that works. That is terrifying. But first 3 rounds I gave to Jan. The 4th round is where Ankalaev started to get his takedowns, was able to control Jan for a good majority of that fight. I gave that round a 10-9. Once we got to the 5th round, that's when Ankalaev was again, from the beginning of the fight, or the beginning of the round, excuse me, it seemed like Jan tripped or got injured or stumbled or something, but he basically lost his balance, lost his position, ended up on the ground almost immediately, and never got back up. Never was able to land any damage, never was able to do anything significant, and Ankalaev took full control of that round for seemingly all of 5 minutes. And you had to give him a 10-8 round, in my opinion, for that fight. So, with all that being said, 4 and 5 go to Ankalaev, essentially totaling 3 rounds because I gave him 10-8 for the 5th round. And the first 3 rounds go to Jan, and we end up with a draw.
Yeah, man. Mark, what about you? How did you score this fight, and what did you think of their performances?
Yeah, so I'll cover both of those things because I do want to get to the performances point as well because I have a point on that. But for the scoring, I'll take that first. I also had no problem with this. I feel like people want to make big deal like how could it be a draw? And I fully get it how you can score it for Ankalaev. I also fully get it how it can be a draw. It's very reasonable. You give the first 3 rounds to Jan, you give the 4th to Ankalaev, and you give 10-8 in the 5th to Ankalaev, as Omar just said. Like, you can't really argue so strongly with that scoring. The only really round that was up for the debate is round 1. And, okay, a lot of people gave it to Ankalaev. A lot of people gave it to Jan. It's a debatable round. It's a close round. So just because you slightly prefer a close round to Ankalaev, reacting like it can't possibly be a draw, I think is crazy. Mm-hmm. But for me, yeah, it can't, round 1 is the swing round. I'm honestly, my first rewatch, I scored it for Jan. My second rewatch, I was like, fuck, I kind of had that dead even. So I'm torn on round 1. Originally, I had edged it for Jan. Jan wins round 2. I've heard some people say round 3 you could give to Ankalaev. I disagree. I get it. He did some stuff late, but his legs were getting fucking butchered in that round. And I agree with Omar. It's no different than if you got rocked. Magomed wins round 4, and I agree that round 5 should be a 10-8. He was putting it on him. So, you know, it could be 48-46 Magomed, or it could be 47-47. If you want to talk about the one judge who didn't give a 10-8 in round 5, okay, I get that. We can have that debate that's a problem, but it didn't even affect the result because instead of a split draw, it would have been a majority draw. So it's a draw either way, regardless of what that judge did. So, I was fine with it. And if you look at on MMA decisions, the most common score from the public is a draw. I think it was like something almost 30% or something like that. I had it as a draw. So it's a close fight. This is what happens in close fights. But as for the fight itself, I thought it was a really interesting fight and a great battle, and that Jan kind of got stripped of a lot of the credit that he deserves because of how it was handled in the post-fight. Like, fucking Rogan is all in his face about how he thinks Magomed won, and Jan just got whooped for the last 10 minutes of the fight, so who knows where his brain is located. He probably barely remembers a thing, and he's like, yeah, sure, it doesn't feel like I won, so... And Rogan's in my face about how I definitely didn't win, so I must not have. So I'll make this comment about how, oh, go ahead and give Magomed his belt. And it's all such a stupid fucking mess. What should have happened is that they admit it was a close fight, that it could have gone to Magomed, but that Jan's game plan in the opening rounds of that fight was fantastic, and that his hot start managed to earn a draw for himself. That's what it should be. So, he attacked Magomed in a way that we haven't seen anyone do with success. He found a vulnerability. He found a way to limit the striking attack of Magomed and the way he can kind of sit back and pick you apart. He took that away from him, and he deserves credit for it. And Magomed should be loving Jan right now, in my opinion, because it took Jan destroying his legs to remind him that he can fucking wrestle. And boy, can he ever wrestle when he actually uses it. So I don't know why he hasn't been using it of late. But once he did in this fight, the whole fight changed, of course. So if these two run it back, I expect we'll see Magomed look for that wrestling a lot earlier. But yeah, to me, the story of this fight should have been what a great game plan from Jan. What a really gutty, memorable performance from Magomed to come back. And a draw that's a justifiable draw.
Yeah. Well, the questions of what's next for these guys, I guess, is sort of a foregone conclusion. And also, we also know what's next for the light heavyweight belt. What's next for the light heavyweight belt, which was announced like immediately, is Glover versus I'm blanking.
Jamal Hill.
In Brazil, right?
Yeah.
God.
Interesting choice that you have you have Jamal Hill booked against Anthony Smith, and you yank him out of that fight to get someone on the card with Glover. But I guess I don't hate it. I'm happy to see Glover get a title fight in Brazil. Who knows how many fights he has left, and that's pretty awesome for him. But it does suck for Anthony Smith. It's kind of random that just because they had a draw, that Jan and Ankalaev are now like not getting a title shot. And Dana's sitting there saying what a bad fight it was. I didn't see that.
It was a great fight.
I thought it was a fantastic fight.
Such a back and forth fight. It was a great fight.
I didn't understand it at all. I thought it was an enjoyable fight. I don't know what the fuck he's bitching about. I think he wasn't paying attention, to be perfectly honest.
I honestly think they were just spoiled, bro. You're talking about 10 knockouts or submissions kind of in a row, and then the Patty fight and the main event were both decisions. So it might have just been some bias as to how crazy that night was up until that point.
Maybe.
My two takeaways were, I was a little frustrated with Jan. I wish he targeted that leg a little more tenaciously. Of course, that's easier said than done. He's in there. He's fighting.
Dude, in round 3, when he froze him twice in like a 30-second span, I thought he was going to charge with leg.
Finish him, yeah.
And he kind of just chilled.
A little too patient.
Maybe it does affect him and he just doesn't show it. He might just have a good poker face. Because shin to shin, bro, shin to shin sucks. That's what you're not really trying to go for. At least when you're kicking, anyway.
I also think that man is a tank.
Well, he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
My other big takeaway was that I was just so impressed by Magomed Ankalaev's resolve and his ability to sort of kind of on the fly adjust to where his body was at in that fight. Because instead of sort of cowering away and saying, don't kick my leg, and kind of being 100%. Afraid of it, he went right at Jan Blachowicz. And I was like, God, how do you not appreciate this guy's talent and ability and grits on top of everything?
Totally.
Yeah, man.
I meant to make that point. He made a mental decision that was, I am going to crash the space between us.
Yes.
So I meant to say crush the space between us, but I guess crash works as well.
Works too.
And take this part of the game away. And I just need to walk forward and be charging at this man and grabbing onto him for every minute that's left in this fight. And he did it.
Super impressive. Super impressive.
So yeah, I don't know if they're gonna actually run this one right back. Considering they booked Glover and Hill, you would think they need a challenger for whoever wins that fight. So it feels like run this back, but with Dana's bitching, I don't know if it's actually going to happen. But if it's me, I would certainly run it back.
I'm not really sure how Derek Cleary, one of the judges, had round 3 10-9 for Ankalaev. I thought 2 and 3 were really clear. I thought 4 and 5 were really clear, and I thought 1 was the one that was a toss-up. But I don't think Ankalaev won 3 at all. It seems wild.
Yeah,
It wouldn't have mattered, but
I agree.
still.